Today we're going to look at Lydia. Lydia that's mentioned in the Bible. In the New Testament, she's mentioned in the book of Acts, and to be precise, Acts 16. She gets saved, and there's literally just a couple of verses on her. I did mention this in a previous video, how people got saved in the book of Acts. And you can see there was a process involved. And it was the same for this woman here. And what I want to do is take you on a biblical journey. I just want to illustrate that basically anybody can do this. This is how I read the Bible now, one of the many ways anyway. So sometimes I'm guided. You'll find you will be guided sometimes to certain parts of the Bible, or maybe a verse will pop out. So what I'm doing is just showing you. For me, it was Lydia. Yeah. And I can see, I can relate to her slightly. But she's hardly anything mentioned there at all, and I'll read the verses to you. But it's amazing, from that very scant information, you can end up going on a massive journey all round the Bible. And I'll just take you on a few little bits and pieces, and you'll see how amazing the Bible is, So let's go to Acts 16. Let's go to Acts 16 and have a look at what this Lydia, what her role was in the Bible. I mean, basically, a short summary of Acts 16 is Paul goes on a journey. I'm really cutting it down brief here. And he wants to go here and he wants to go there. And the Spirit keeps telling him, no, you're not going there. He wants to go to this place. And no, you're not going there. And he ends up in this place and ends up preaching to, well, not just this woman, this Lydia, but a number of women there. And it just goes to show how the Lord works. And you start to see all these jigsaw pieces start to fit together. Once he saves her, she believes, he ends up preaching other places, and he ends up in prison because they see him as a troublemaker. Ends up in prison. There's an earthquake, and the doors are opened, and the jailer comes back and sees them, and they're all still there. All just sitting there, they haven't escaped. He gets converted in the process, and then they leave, and they end up staying at Lydia's house. That's near the end of the, Acts 16 of the final verses, and that's it. That's what Acts 16 is. But it is interesting when you actually get into this. I'll show you this, and you'll be fascinated. And you can apply this to anything or anybody, any situation in the Bible. But you have to know it first. I wouldn't say inside out, but you have to know that thing. For me, myself, I've only read it a couple of times, and that thing, it feels like it's not only the Spirit's been planted inside me, but that the Word has been planted inside me as well. And things just come up in my mind, and I'll show you some of the stuff. And it'll be a fascinating watch. So let's read these couple of verses where this Lydia appears in Acts 16. Right, so Acts 16, 13 to 15. And on the Sabbath we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made, and we sat down. This is Paul, and his cohorts, and spake unto the women which resorted thither. And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, which worshipped God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. And when she was baptized, and her household, she besought us, saying, If ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she constrained us. Now, near the end, when Paul leaves the prison, and it's Acts 16, 39 to 40. And they came and besought them and brought them out and desired them to depart out of the city. And they went out of the prison and entered into the house of Lydia. And when they had seen the brethren, they comforted them and departed. And that's it. Yeah, so expand on this a bit. Let's go to Acts 16:12, because we don't actually know where Paul was, isn't it? Yeah, and how he bumped into this Lydia. And let's read that. And from thence to Philippi, that's the town where they were, which was a city, which is the chief city of that part of Macedonia. So they're in Macedonia, and a colony. And we were in that city abiding certain days. Right, and this is one of the key verses. And on that Sabbath, we went out of the city by a riverside where prayer was wont to be made, and we sat down and spake unto the women which resorted thither. So it looks like it's the Sabbath, and there's women that are praying by the riverside, and it looks like it's a place where people pray. So it could be a building. We don't know what it is, do we? And Paul sat down with his colleagues and spake to the women which resorted thither. Obviously, he started preaching probably about Jesus, yeah? Now, these people, it's the Sabbath, and they were praying on the Sabbath day. I'm making the assumption here, but these are Jewish women, and maybe the women had to pray in a separate place from men. I don't know. I don't know what the custom was. But it's mentioned here, we spake unto the women. So he probably didn't start preaching straight away. He just started talking to them, and then maybe started bringing Jesus into the conversation, isn't it? So we go to verse 14. And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, which worshipped God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. Yeah. Now, we don't know how many women were there, but she was with this group of women, and by the sounds of it, they were all praying as well, by the sounds of it. Yeah. So she was what you would call a Jewess, called Lydia, and she was a seller of purple. Now, when I first read this, I thought she was a seller of purple clothes. But no, she's a seller of purple, when you research this, seller of purple dye. The dye she was selling was very, very rare, and this was used to dye clothing. And because of its expense, it was only worn, the clothes are only worn that contain this dye, by people that were regal, royalty, kings, princes. I'm not sure about queens, and I don't know, but I mean, it was that sort of colour. Very expensive. So I mean, basically what she was doing, she was from Thyatira, and she was in Philippi, yeah, which I've done the research on this. It's about 300 miles away. So she was on, we are assuming, a business trip. She was a businesswoman, yeah. If she was selling this very rare dye, and she was a trader of it, then she obviously, I don't think she actually dealt with royalty and nobility, these sort of people, people in high places. She dealt with the tailors and the people that made the clothes for these people and brought them the dye. So maybe she did go to these palaces or wherever they live. But she was, I would say this woman was quite well off. And this is quite significant that she is well off, because if you think about it, she's got plenty of money, she's comfortable in life, and she believes in God. So why would she need to believe in Jesus? She's got everything she needs. She's got a comfortable life, and she believes in God. She believes there is a God, and she prays. But she's a religious woman, isn't she? Yeah, and if we get into, she worshipped God, so in the Jewish way, I would say. And she heard us. Yeah, she heard us. Now this is important, because we go back to the parable of the sower. What does it say? It says, those with the ears to hear will hear. Yeah, she heard. Let's just say there was only 10 women there. 10 women, and she was one of the 10. She heard. If we go further into the verses, the other 9, they didn't hear, did they? Yeah, they heard what was said, but they didn't hear the way Lydia heard it. And as it says, she heard us, whose heart the Lord opened. Now this is the most crucial part of it. Yeah, she heard, but the Lord opened her heart. Now, if we go back to what happened to Paul on his journey, he wanted to go here, he wanted to go there, and he was blocked by the Spirit. Read Acts 16. And he ended up where he was, and ended up preaching to this woman with these other women. But the Lord had chosen this woman for a reason, isn't it? Which becomes apparent later on, doesn't it? You see why. Whose heart the Lord opens. If we digress from this and go into what sprang into my mind when I read this, is going back to the Old Testament, if you remember the 10 plagues that the Lord sent down on Pharaoh and Egypt. Yeah, I'm going to read you some of the verses from that, and you'll see that Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Yeah, the exact opposite what happened to this Lydia. Here we go to Exodus 10:1. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs before him. Yeah, he hardened his heart every time so that Pharaoh would see the 10 signs. These 10 signs, the 10, because this was going to be etched in people's minds throughout history, isn't it? Probably after the second or the third sign, Pharaoh probably would have backed down on his own. But the Lord hardened his heart. It's mentioned there in 10:1, and it's mentioned in Exodus 10:20. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. Yeah. And then it's mentioned in Exodus 10:27. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart and he would not let them go. If we go into the New Testament, there's something mentioned about the heart again. And this is John 12:40. Have a listen to this. He hath blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their hearts, and be converted, and I should heal them. Now, I mentioned this in a previous video, isn't it? Healing, the word healing is mentioned there, isn't it? Before, when Jesus was alive, he did physical healing, wasn't it? But when he was resurrected, beginning of the church age, he's done spiritual healing, isn't it? And it mentions here, be converted. He's not talking about normal physical healing here. He's talking about being saved, isn't it? And I thought I'd just mention that because if you go back to Lydia, and it says, whose heart the Lord opened. He opened her heart, that she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. Now, we don't know whether she believed at that point, but the confirmation we've got, because the normal process in the book of Acts was, it varied sometimes they got baptized first, but it was, they heard the gospel, or, the story about Jesus. They believed, they were saved, they got the Spirit, and sometimes there was evidence they got the Spirit. Some of the gifts, prophesying, speaking in tongues, wherever it was. And then they got baptized. Under Peter, they got baptized first, then they got the Spirit, and then they were saved. But all those elements feature in there somewhere, yeah? But we don't know with this woman here. When you read the next verse, Acts 16:15, and when she was baptized, well, there's the confirmation, isn't it? And her household, she besought us, saying, If ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house and abide there. And she constrained us. Now, after that, Paul ends up in prison. And then there's a sort of a miracle that happens. There's an earthquake there. The jailer, they didn't leave. They stayed there. The actual gates were open. They could have escaped. They didn't. The jailer saw all this. They sees them sitting there. And he gets converted as well. He believes. And then the final verse is, and they went out of the prison and entered into the house of Lydia. And when they had seen the brethren, they comforted them and departed. Now, I'm just looking at this and I think, you think, why? When you look at that journey of Paul, no, don't go here, the Spirit told him. Don't go there. I want to go. No, don't preach in Asia. No, you're not going there. And he ended up in Macedonia, and he ended up in this city called Philippi. And then he just happened to chance upon this Lydia with these other women, the seller of purple. And then, of course, when he left, he had somewhere to stay when he left the prison. And then they departed to continue their journey, isn't it? And you just wonder, you start thinking, well, was that all pre-planned by the Lord? He knew all that all along. That's why the Spirit blocked him to go those other places. We don't know, do we? And I'll tell you one more thing, is this woman, she had money. And I think the Lord, he works in opposites. She has no need on this earth for, she believed in God. She had money. She had a comfortable lifestyle. She sounded healthy. We don't know if she had kids. We don't know. She was 300 miles away from home, so she wouldn't take her kids with her on a business trip. We don't know whether she was young or old. The picture I've included in this video as the thumb, that just screamed out to me. I thought, yeah, that she could look like that. She may be that age. I don't know. But I'm going to leave one final thought with you, and that's this verse here. Because this, as I said, with the Lord, he works with opposites. If you take Paul as an example, yeah, he was a killer of Christians. That was his job, wasn't it? He killed the saints. When he got saved, there was a 3-day transition period. He went from, he was Saul, wasn't he, before, and then 3-day transition period, he went blind, and then he got his sight back, and then next thing you know, he's preaching the gospel, never killed another Christian again, did he? Yeah. From one extreme to the other. These always make the best testimonies, isn't it? This woman here, we don't know what she did. She had a house. It sounds like she had a house in this Philippi, whatever the name of this city is. They must have stayed there because she was from Thyatira down the road, 300 miles away. So she must have had, she was from there, she must have had a house there as well. The mind boggles, doesn't it? You think, well, she's got at least 2 houses then. We don't know what her husband did for a living. We don't know if she's married or whatever it is. What was the fascination? The Lord clearly chose this woman for a reason, isn't it? Yeah, and I'm just fascinated. And again, I think it's this opposites thing. That's what I think it is. Opposites. She's got everything. She's not going through a crisis period in her life. Some people get saved through that time. They come to the end of the road. They're thinking of killing themselves. A lot of this happens a lot, doesn't it? And then suddenly Jesus appears in their life. They get saved, and they wherever it is. But she believes in God. She believes in God. She's got a comfortable life. And we don't know, but it mentions in Acts that everybody that got converted, they sold everything and shared it out, helped the needy, whatever it is. They everything they had, they shared with other people. And this woman had a lot of stuff, isn't it? And there's a verse that sticks in my mind. I'm going to finish this video on this. It is so important, this, because Jesus talks about this, about rich people and how hard it is for them to come into the faith. And I'll read it to you. And I think you know the one I'm talking about. This is Matthew 19, 16 to 26. Yeah. He'd been laying hands on people, and a wealthy person came up to him and said this. Matthew 19, 16 to 26. This is worth listening to. And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And he said unto him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. He said unto him, Which? Jesus said, Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Honour thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself. The young man saith unto him, All these things have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? And Jesus said unto him, If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, Verily I say to you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. When his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, Who then can be saved? But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And I just think that's absolutely amazing. And I think that's why I think he picked this Lydia. He picked her because, I wouldn't say she was rich, she's probably middle class or something like that. I don't know. She certainly wasn't nobility. The Lord picked her. She had everything. She prayed to God. She believed in God. But she didn't, either she never heard of Jesus or she didn't believe in Jesus. When she heard the story, then she could see the connection. And that's when she believed, that's when she got saved. And we assume she got the Spirit. She got baptized, and that's it. And she came into the faith, isn't it? And that's why he picked her. But probably the number of rich people that actually come into the faith, I think is very limited. Yeah. Most people, if they are, they're praying to God, going to, say institutional churches, that sort of thing, and trying to get more money, And they're probably praying more to the God of this world than the one that Christians are involved with, isn't it? But that's it. But that's the end of the video, people. I could go on and on and on here, but it's just a prime example You have to know the Bible for starters, but I mean, you can do cross-references as well. I'll do some other examples of this if there's interest in it, but it's absolutely amazing. Just from those 2-3 Bible verses, a woman we don't know much about, and a seller of purple, and you think, well, what's it? Doesn't mean anything, does it? You just read it and think, oh well, she got saved, baptized, thank you very much, great, and she met Paul. That's it. And if you're reading it quick, just reading, say, on a daily read, Acts 16, you probably miss a lot of this, And I suggest you do this yourself. If you're fascinated with, I don't know, Joshua or David, really go into it and do some research. I mean, I know David, he used to like playing the harp. There you go. That'll take you on a journey. Why did he play the harp? Always playing, you see pictures of him, old paintings and all the rest of it. He's got a harp, hasn't he? Yeah. And that's it. Or the psaltery, they call it, isn't it? Yeah. But that's it. Anyway, that's it, people. I'm dragging on too long. It's nearly 25 minutes. This is Frank of the 12 Gates. As I always say, peace, love and joy. And keep your eyes firmly fixed on the Lord. And I shall catch you in the next one.